All right, today we're taking a trip, a deep dive into one of the most famous and, frankly, terrifying landscapes ever imagined, Dante Alighieri's Inferno. It's the first part of his epic poem, The Divine Comedy, and it's been haunting us for 700 years.
Now look, I get it. The thought of reading a 14th century Italian epic can feel a little intense. And as this brilliant Goodreads reviewer points out, the topic isn't exactly a walk in the park. You just assume it's all about punishment, right?
But that's the real mystery, isn't it? If it's just a long old book about how terrible hell is, why has it stuck with us? What is it about this particular vision of the underworld that has captivated people for 7 centuries? What makes it a masterpiece? To figure that out, you really have to start with the guy who wrote it. So let's talk about Dante Alighieri, because his real life had just as much drama and turmoil as his trip through hell. See, Dante wasn't just some poet living in an ivory tower. He was a politician, deeply involved in the chaotic world of Florence. And then, in 1302, everything went wrong. The political winds shifted, and he was exiled, kicked out of his beloved city forever. He would never see it again. And it's during that long, bitter exile that he wrote The Divine Comedy. It's a work that comes from a place of deep faith, for sure, but also a whole lot of personal pain and political anger. The poem kicks off with Dante, the character, having what is essentially a midlife crisis. He's 35 years old, halfway through a biblical lifespan, and he's completely lost his way. This dark wood he's wandering in, that's a symbol for a life that's gone off the rails, a life entangled in sin. So right from the start, this isn't just a fantasy story. It's about a soul in trouble. But here's the thing. Dante doesn't have to go it alone. Right when he's at his lowest point, trying to get out of that dark forest, a guide appears, sent from heaven to lead him on this insane journey. And his guide is none other than his personal hero, the ancient Roman poet Virgil. Now, allegorically, Virgil is super important. He represents human reason. He's the voice of logic and wisdom that can help Dante understand the nature of sin. But Virgil himself was sent by an even higher power, Beatrice, the woman Dante loved his whole life. She represents divine love. So you have reason leading the way, all powered by love. It's a pretty brilliant setup. Okay, now let's get to the good stuff. The map of hell itself. Because this is not just some chaotic pit of fire. Oh no. Dante's hell is a highly organized, deeply symbolic world with a terrifyingly precise architecture. He imagined hell as a gigantic funnel or a cone burrowing its way down to the center of the earth. And he divides this whole abyss into 9 distinct concentric circles. Each circle is reserved for a specific category of sin. And there is a very clear logic here. The sins punished in the upper circles, what we call upper hell, are sins of passion, sins where you lost control. But as you go deeper, the sins get colder, more malicious, more calculated. You move from violence into outright fraud. The deeper you go, the worse the sin, and the farther you are from the warmth of God's love. So you see, this whole physical trip down into the guts of the earth is actually a spiritual one. For the soul to be saved, to climb towards God, it first has to descend. It has to look every single sin square in the face and understand its true ugly nature. Now, this is where Dante's genius really kicks into high gear. The punishments themselves are not random at all. He came up with this incredible system of divine justice that governs the entire underworld. He calls it contrapasso. It's this idea of symbolic retribution. Basically, the punishment is a twisted, eternal reflection of the crime. It either mimics the sin perfectly, or it's the sin's polar opposite. Let me give you a perfect and perfectly chilling example: the fortune tellers. In life, their sin was trying to see into the future. So, in hell, their heads are twisted completely around on their necks. For all of eternity, they are forced to walk backwards, able to see only what's behind them as their tears run down their backs. It's poetic, it's fitting, and it is absolutely horrifying. But the Inferno isn't just about theology and abstract ideas. You have to understand, it was also Dante's chance to comment on the world around him and to settle some very, very personal scores. This is what made the poem so incredibly shocking and relevant to its first readers. Dante didn't fill hell with fictional sinners. He filled it with real people. Historical figures, sure, but also his own contemporaries. People he knew, people he hated, some of whom are still alive.
Can you even imagine reading a new book and finding your neighbor being punished in the third circle of hell? So who's on the guest list? Oh, you've got the political rivals who got him exiled, for sure. You have popes he considered corrupt. He mixes in famous figures from classical mythology. He populates circle after circle with citizens of Florence. He even, heartbreakingly, places people he admired, like his old mentor, in hell for sins he just couldn't overlook. The poem becomes this incredible commentary on history and morality. And his imagery is just unforgettable. Take this scene from the fourth circle. Here, the greedy and the wasteful are locked in this eternal, pointless battle. They have to push these massive, soul-crushing weights back and forth against each other, forever. It's a perfect image for the futility of their earthly obsession with wealth. But what's the absolute worst sin in Dante's mind? What gets you to the very bottom of hell? It's not violence. It's not greed. It's treachery. The betrayal of trust. And the center of hell isn't a fiery pit, it's a frozen wasteland. And there, at the very bottom, is Satan himself, trapped in the ice, chewing on the three greatest traitors in history: Brutus, Cassius, and Judas Iscariot. So all of this brings us back to that big question from the beginning. After 700 years, why does this poem still have such a grip on us? Why do we keep going back to this dark, difficult place? Well, the Inferno lasts because it's so much more than just a horror story. It's this incredibly profound journey into the psychology of sin. The world building is so vivid and so systematic that it basically defined our vision of the afterlife for centuries. It literally helped create the modern Italian language. And maybe most importantly, it grapples with these timeless, universal questions about justice, faith, and redemption that we are still asking ourselves today. And what's really crucial is that this is Dante's own story. He isn't just some tourist pointing fingers. As he goes through hell, he constantly recognizes himself in the sinners. He feels pity. He understands their failings. The journey is his own confession, his own realization that he too is flawed and needs to find his way back. After witnessing the absolute worst of human sin, after reaching the center of all evil, Dante and Virgil finally climb out the other side of the world. And the final line of the Inferno is just so full of hope. It's a reminder that even after the darkest possible journey, you can emerge, you can come through it, and you can look up at the heavens again. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Dante created a moral universe that was a perfect reflection of his time. So if you were to write an Inferno for our time, what would its circles be? What would our greatest sins be? And who would you find there? The fact that we can even ask that question just proves how powerfully Dante's masterpiece still forces us to think about sin, justice, and the world we live in right now.